But I want to spend some time right now on Pete Prisco of CBS's list of the top 100 players in the National Football League. Does this annually, and it always generates a healthy amount of discussion and debate. And I tell you all the time, like, what do I do when you see a list like this? Well, I immediately go to the local angle. We talked in the first hour about looking at LSU from a recruiting perspective and looking at rivalry rankings, and both of those I'm like, all right, well, how is LSU affected? Well, in this instance, like, what do the Saints look like as far as top 100 players in the NFL? And I started going through, and I was like, okay, if I think about the roster before I look at the list, I would say you got a chance to get Kamara on there. He had a pretty heavy workload last year. I would say Eric McCoy has a reasonable chance to make that list. And then you start to run a little bit low after Demario Davis. Maybe Chase Young. These are kind of the names that I'm tossing around in my head. And ultimately, I put pen to paper and I said, I think the Saints will have two on the list. I think they will have Eric McCoy and Demario Davis. Like, those are the two I landed on. Because you keep in mind, Demario Davis had a career high in tackles last year. May not realize that, but he did. Some say you turn on the tape, like he's not quite the player that he once was, doesn't get after the quarterback quite like he once did, but still productive, making plays. And then McCoy, I think, is, one of the top 3 or 4 centers in the NFL. So those are the two that I kind of settled on. And then I went in and looked. Maybe Chase Young finds his way on there. I don't think Carl Granderson backed up his good year last year. So let's look. And you start scrolling through 100, 90, 80, 70, 60. By the time you roll around to 30, I'm thinking, I don't think that anybody on the Saints is going to make this list in the 30s or the 20s. And they didn't. Pete Prisco, top 100 players in the National Football League, the Saints are not represented. And does that really matter in the grand scheme? No. Is it a reflection of where this roster has fallen to? I think so. I think when you start to look at all of the outside observers who were sitting back like us, not looking at Mickey Loomis, not talking about what Kellen Moore thinks or what Doug Nussmeier thinks, not what Cam Jordan's goals are for the season, like just looking back at us, whether it's Joe Fan, Pete Prisco, Hunt Palmer, or the sports book out in Vegas. And you start to look at this and you see the Saints win-loss total hovering around 5.5. And you see Pete Prisco put together a list and say there's not a single player on this roster that's in the top 100 players in the league. There's so much smoke, the fire's got to be there. Like that, it just is what it is. The roster right now is at a spot that is as bad as any in the NFL. And that can dampen the way you feel about what's coming over the next 7 months. Because, to be really honest, meaningful football is probably not in the near future for the Saints. But if some of these guys can take leaps early in their career and become the pillars of the next really good Saints team as the old pillars move out, because none of them are valued here in the best 100 players in the year. I mean, you're talking about guys that have made this list before. Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Ryan Ramczyk, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Tyrann Mathieu, Chase Young. There are guys on this roster that have made this list, but they don't make it anymore. So that's the reality of the situation for these Saints. And it's sobering. Like, you want to get so jazzed up. And look, I'm not suggesting that Saints fans aren't jazzed up. They sold out minicamp last month. It was 100 degrees, and the Who Dat Nation packed the joint to watch these guys practice. So the support is always going to be there. The passion is always going to be there. I just don't get the sense that the expectation is quite there. And with that, the anticipation is not. That first Sunday, sure. You get up, You put the jersey on, you get the food out, you get ready to roll, and you're excited to watch Tyler Shook with the hope and the anticipation that he's the next guy. But I think in the back of every Saints fan's mind, and certainly those of us that cover the team, you're also looking at it from this perspective and going, what can we even expect from this? You're paying the piper now for that run of greatness that we saw. And I think the way the Saints operated during that greatness was appropriate. I thought they did a good job. They had, over the course of that 15 years, they had 4 or 5 teams that could have gotten all the way. They really did. And when you've got that opportunity, you've got to try to capitalize, because you know that this part of the process is always lurking around the corner. Very few organizations fight off this spot. The Steelers have done it. The Packers have done it. The Ravens have done it. But just about everybody else gets into a spin cycle. And the Chiefs are at the zenith of what they are going to be, but you never thought the Patriots were going to lose again, and they stink now. And the Chiefs will stink soon. It's just part of the deal. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes won't be there forever, just like Drew Brees and Sean Payton weren't here forever. And the result after that crowning era usually looks something like this. And I was a little bit surprised. I'll be honest. I was a little bit surprised to look up and see not a single one of the Saints listed. I mean, you look at some of the guys toward the end of this list. Jalen Ramsey, who's probably just off his prime. Tyler Smith from the Cowboys, offensive tackle. Travis Kelce at 96. Derwin James. Ladd McConkey. Jordan Love. Devontae Adams. Like, these are the guys at the back end of that list. And to suggest the Saints still have anybody on the roster that can be in that conversation is a bummer. It really is. But hopefully, as you move forward, next year, maybe Olave makes the list. Maybe you talking about Taliesin Fuanga on the list. Maybe Eric McCoy does make the list next year. Maybe Kool-Aid McKinstry becomes that dude. It's possible. You've got some young players with some upside, but you've got to see it on the field. And to this point, most people don't feel comfortable with what they've seen from a lot of the guys on the Saints roster. So, look, that's Pete Prisco's opinion. Not necessarily the correct answer, but it is, to me, telling of where the Saints are at this point. All right, if you're looking for Saints coverage, you can certainly find it at LouisianaSports.net, where Ross Jackson's coming up with original content every single day. My stuff's up at Hunt on Saints, wherever you find your podcast, or on YouTube. Check that out as we get really, really close to the Saints reporting the training camp here within the next couple of weeks. We'll be talking about actual football practices that are going on with an intent to go play a game. We're getting closer, and we'll be at SEC Media Days next week on the college side of things as we inch towards the fall. But I'm not ready to completely slam the door on summer just yet. I kind of like summer. Had a good weekend. Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.